All right, Krystal, what's on your radar?
Well, I got a little news flash, friends. Guess who is rocketing up the polls? Bernie Sanders, you say? Well, yes, but guess who else? Mayor Pete? No, his high hopes seem to be flattening out mostly. I'm talking, of course, about your favorite election-buying billionaires, Tom Steyer and Michael Bloomberg. That's right, folks. Check this out. Tom Steyer is now in a statistical tie for second place in South Carolina, and he's tied for third in Nevada. On the strength of those two polls, he is now qualified for next week's debate. Bloomberg has also jumped ahead of quite a number of competitors who've been at this thing much longer. Our own Hill Harris X poll pegged him at 11% nationally, putting him in a tie for third. He's at 6% right now in Super Tuesday states, in a statistical tie with Pete for fourth place. Now, to state the embarrassingly obvious, money has just a tad to do with it. My husband actually just got back from Las Vegas, where he said Steyer billboards and ads are absolutely everywhere. Bloomberg has spent way more than $100 million just in TV ads. He's built out an organization that's rivaled in size only by Bernie Sanders, who, remember, has been building out a national organization really for 4 years now. As I often say here, money ain't everything, but it ain't nothing either. As frenemy of the show, Dave Weigel tweeted, 90% of the Steyer-Bloomberg strategy right now is to flood the airwaves and digital space in places where other Dems can't burn money yet, and it is hilariously effective. Yeah, hilarious. But this isn't just another rant about how billionaires are buying our democracy in a corrosive and sick way, although they certainly are. It's a story about us. Because ultimately, no matter how much money you put behind a product or a candidate, it's not going to sell if no one wants it. No, this is a story about our self-loathing complicity in selling our republic. Because ever since we were small children, we've been taught to worship the billionaire and the CEO. We've been told in ways both overt and subtle that the rich have what they have because they deserve it, because they are better than us in some fundamental way. We have to believe that on some level, or else this whole rotten system in which some get unlimited billions and others are unceremoniously kicked out of their homes and fired because their kid gets sick, it would all come crashing down. From Alfred Sloan's "What's good for GM is good for America" to conflating the national interest with Boeing or GE, or nowadays with Apple or Google, these corporations have no loyalty to us. Our fanboy or fangirl batted eyelashes are not reciprocated, and yet we still feel somewhere deep in our heart of hearts that these people, these titans of industry, these modern-day lords with their vast fortunes, are better than us. I have to say, in spite of how insane this is, there is some part of me that still even believes that garbage, that still feels unworthy and inadequate in those rooms. And at this point, I've met a bunch of these billionaires and multi-millionaires, and let me tell you something, they're nothing special. In fact, of course, there are always exceptions, but in general, they're thin-skinned, narcissistic, lacking empathy and emotional maturity, with brittle egos and the imperious nature and perpetual adolescence of being able to buy everything and everyone, sort of like grown-up Violet Beauregards. If I had a choice of who I'd pick to run this country, and my choices were a random UPS package handler or nurse or teacher or one of these billionaire titans, I would pick the working person hands down. Odds are extremely high they'd have more empathy, more compassion, be more willing to give deeply of themselves, more willing to sacrifice deeply for the country, more willing to do the right thing, even if it wasn't in their personal short-term best interest. It's no accident that our servicemen and women are drawn overwhelmingly from the ranks of the working class. Normal people, despite what economist soothsayers will tell you, don't act in their personal self-interest most of the time. They lend their worthless brother-in-law money. They overtip a waitress who looks like she's had a hard day. They pick up after themselves and bust their own table. They hold the door for other people. They buy their kids an Xbox when they really can't afford it. They tithe more, they help more, they care more than is in their personal best interest. They give more of their money to charity and are just generally kinder human beings. Now, this isn't just me being a judgmental class warrior jerk, though I am not afraid of being that. There is actual data and science to back all of that up. The rich are different than you and me. They're statistically more likely to be terrible. Now, there may be a temptation to think terrible people could actually make better presidents, but being a corporate CEO or financial master of the universe could not possibly be worse training for the presidency. As a CEO, you are more or less a dictator. Empathy is discouraged. Your own personal interest maximization is valued above all else. You're essentially trained as a dictator. So look, America, I get it. We've had it ceaselessly drilled into us that these people are superior. These people have stepped on everyone and destroyed everything they needed to claw their way to the top of the inequality ladder, or even the ones who just landed there through no effort of their own thanks to mommy and daddy. We are conditioned to look at them as leaders, as worthy of our respect, as superior. But please don't be moved by the barrage of ads and seduction of class hierarchy. We can do better than the billionaires. Sagar, this poll opened a lot of eyes, but we should not be stunned because the amount of money that these guys are spending is going to have an impact, especially when there is this deeply ingrained sense in all of us that they deserve to be where they are and they are the rightful leaders in this country.
So I believe with TV spending that Bloomberg and Steyer combined have spent approximately $270 million. And I've also seen speculation that ad rates are exponentially higher on YouTube and other places because of Michael Bloomberg. They're literally bidding so high on the number of ads. I think it goes to a core thing of a question of whether this is okay. It really is the clearest societal test. Ryan Grim, and I've said this on the show before, has said that this is the clearest political science experiment about how much of the vote can you actually buy.
Yeah.
And actually what I also think it is how much tolerance as Americans do we have for a plutocratic level of funding into our elections. Are we actually okay with this? This is like a national referendum on this. And then we're going to find out on Election Day.
Yeah.
And it's like, what you highlighted and what we've talked about is, Bloomberg's not going to buy the race. Steyer's not going to buy the race. But think about the third and the fourth order effects of him tying with Bernie in South Carolina, beating Elizabeth Warren in the state of Nevada. That is purely a function of money. And how did Michael Bloomberg and Tom Steyer make their money? How did they do that? Tom Steyer is a hedge fund guy, exploiting inefficiencies in the market before they're realized by everybody else. And Michael Bloomberg made financial transactions more efficient. Are we better off as a society for these things?
Well, that's
I would say no.
That's
right?
it.
And that is really what I look at. Is like, A, not only how do these guys make their wealth, but if this is how that they choose to spend it, this is the biggest problem for a democracy, for an actual ability. And yet it is also inspiring, which is we have a guy like Yang and Bernie. Bernie just outraised everybody else in the field through a grassroots fundraising as a grassroots army. Andrew Yang raised $16.5 million. So we have this
It's both inspiring and depressing.
It's inspiring and depressing, right.
You add up how many $18 contributions would it take, to match
right.
Bloomberg's we're only talking about ad spending. We're not even talking about the salaries for the 800 staffers that he has
with
spread
guaranteed payout till November
across the country.
Right.
And this is what I was trying to get at is, yes, the money, right? All of this is enabled and put into place by the money. But there also has to be some baseline level of appeal there to jump up to second place in the poll. Look, Jeb Bush had plenty of money behind him.
He did.
And yet there was nothing there. No one bought into it. But because these guys have this mystique of the businessman that's been drilled into us, that these are special people, they're special creatures, they're dynamic leaders, that we're susceptible to believing in it when we see. But look at Steyer. And Ryan talks about how Bloomberg in particular is the most natural experiment of what money can get you. In some ways, Steyer is even more so because Bloomberg already had a brand, a political brand. Steyer was essentially not on the political radar really at all. Doesn't have any particular, he doesn't have any political accomplishment, doesn't have any particularly charismatic persona. He says he's running on climate change when, his climate platform, the Sunrise Movement just endorsed Bernie. He has the most ambitious climate platform. So if that's your thing, Bernie should be your guy. He made his money in part off the coal industry, still apparently has some financial interest in the coal industry. So there is literally nothing there. And yet to jump up, it's one poll, we should say, but there are indications in other polls that there is something there that is catching on.
We've talked about the early states. He had 12% or whatever.
Yeah.
I think the interest...
When we called out for please, if you're a Tom Steyer supporter, and this still goes, we want you to come on the show. We want to know why. We want to hear your thoughts on this.
But no fake ones, all right? Because a lot of you tried to trick me.
And we'll be fair. We're fair to all of
But that's the main thing is with Steyer is that he understood at least the organizing effort. And that's why he invested hundreds of millions of dollars. He had these next-gen organizations, all these other things which were built up their lists on impeachment.
Didn't his staffers steal Kamala's list too?
Oh yeah, that was the whole thing. But him and his people had been planning this for years and years and years. So again, it just shows you what money can buy you in our society, particularly in our elections, and how vulnerable they are to this.
Yeah, and he went all in on impeachment, and for a certain segment of the Democratic base, they're into that. All right, Sagar, looking forward to your radar. That's next.